Zarya froze when the door creaked open. Cashin Moretti stumbled in, soaked in rain and blood, a bullet lodged in his side and a screaming baby clinging to him. "If I die, don't let them find her," he rasped, collapsing in a crimson pool. Chicago's night air carried a heaviness, cold enough to sting, humid enough to drag on the lungs. A soft drizzle whispered against the pavement, turning the sidewalks into mirrors that reflected the diner's flickering neon sign, Rosie's, open 24 hours. It was closing time for Zarya Holt. Even though the diner never technically closed, her shift did. The bell above the door gave a tired jingle as she stepped outside, key ring swinging from her fingertip. The metallic clink of the keys echoed unnervingly loud on the empty street. Rain tapped against her hoodie, soaking the fabric slowly, like a creeping cold hand. Zarya exhaled, watching her breath fog in the air. Her shoulders slumped. Her feet throbbed. Her palms still smelled faintly of dish soap and cheap coffee. Behind her, the diner lights hummed with a low electrical buzz, casting a pale yellow glow that softened the chipped paint on the walls and the old red booths inside. She turned the key in the lock, click, and let her forehead rest against the cold glass for just a second. Just one. A moment of quiet in a life that rarely gave her any. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the night. A baby's cry. Not the gentle fussing of a hungry infant. A violent, panicked, throat-straining scream that vibrated through the air like a distress call. Zarya's spine straightened. Her fingers clenched around her keys. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes narrowing, scanning the sidewalk. The crying was bouncing off the wet asphalt, echoing strangely, making it impossible to tell where it came from. "Hello?" Zarya called out, voice tight with suspicion. "Is someone out here?" The night didn't answer. The rain grew slightly heavier, droplets tapping faster against the hood of her jacket, some slipping under the collar to shock the skin at her neck. Then, a shadow shifted. A figure lurched from the mouth of the alley beside the diner, stumbling into the cone of the street lamp's yellow light. Zarya inhaled sharply. The man didn't walk. He collapsed forward with every step, as if gravity hated him. His clothing was soaked, not just from rain, but from blood. Dark, heavy blood that ran in thick lines down his coat, dripping from his elbow in slow, horrifying beads. His hand pressed against his right side, fingers trembling violently. The baby, Nova, was cradled in his other arm, wrapped in a blanket that was no longer white but streaked with red. Her tiny legs kicked weakly. Her fists trembled. Her scream broke into a choking sob. Zarya felt her chest contract painfully. The scene was wrong. All wrong. Too real. Too raw. She took one step toward him. "Sir, hey, Hey." The man looked up, and Zarya froze. His eyes were the first thing she saw, eyes that looked carved from shadow. Haunted. Intelligent. And exhausted in a way that went deeper than injury. Cashin Moretti. Though she didn't know the name yet, she could feel it, something powerful, dangerous, violent, but buried under one thing sharper than fear. Desperation. His lips parted. Blood pooled at the corner of his mouth. Rain streaked down his face, mixing with the sweat and the ache and whatever grief was holding his bones together. His knees buckled. He sank to the pavement. Zarya lunged forward. Just as his voice cracked open the night. "If I die, don't let them find her." Then his body gave out completely. He fell sideways with the slow, awful weight of a man whose strength had been carved away. His shoulder hit the pavement first, then his head, the impact making a hollow thunk. The baby nearly slipped from his arm. Zarya dropped to the ground so fast her knees scraped the wet concrete. "Sir, Hey, stay with me. You're bleeding out." Her voice shook with adrenaline. Rainwater soaked her jeans, mixing instantly with Cashin's blood. Warm and cold collided on her skin in a violent, nauseating blend. Nova's cries intensified, her tiny chest heaving, her damp curls plastered to her forehead. Zarya scooped the baby against her chest instinctively, her hand steady even as her pulse hammered in her ears. Nova's skin was cold. Her blanket was drenched. Her body vibrated with panic. "It's okay, sweetheart, I've got you," Zarya whispered, rocking her slightly, trying to create warmth with her own body. Cashin forced his eyes open again. Barely. The world around them blurred, streetlights smeared into streaks, rain smeared across the pavement, the city seeming to hold its breath. "No cops," he gasped. They'll bring eyes. Wrong eyes. They'll find her. Zarya blinked rain from her lashes. Why not? You need a hospital. Cops bring the Sorellis, he choked. And if they find her, she dies. The name hit her like cold steel. Sorelli. Every Chicago kid heard whispers about that crime family. People the Sorellis wanted gone didn't make it to sunrise. Her breath stuttered. She hugged Nova closer. Then she heard it, a deep engine rumble. A black sedan crept up the block, headlights gliding through the rain, slow and predatory. Cashin's fingers twitched. He grabbed the hem of Zarya's hoodie with the last strength he had. Run, he whispered. Take her, run. Zarya stared at Nova, this tiny, wailing, innocent baby, and made a decision she never expected to make tonight. I'll protect her, she whispered fiercely. I promise. Cashin's body sagged. His hand fell away. His breathing thinned. The sedan rolled to a stop. Rain slid off the chrome bumper. A door cracked open with a soft metallic click. Someone stepped out. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Watching her through the rain. Zarya dragged Cashin across the pavement inch by inch, muscles screaming, hoodie soaked through, her heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Nova's cries echoed into her neck. She shoved open the diner door with her hip and pulled Cashin inside just as the figure approached the entrance. She locked the door. Her hands trembled. Her mind raced. Inside the diner, Cashin bleeding out. Nova shaking. Zarya's chest rising and falling with fear and determination. Outside the diner, danger, death, and a world she never meant to enter. Zarya Holt didn't know the full story yet. But by saving Cashin Moretti's baby, she had just placed herself in the center of a Mafia war. And there was no going back. The diner door clicked shut behind them with a hollow finality, and Zarya felt the lock vibrate beneath her trembling fingers. For a moment, the only sounds were the hum of the old refrigerator, the sickening drip of blood hitting the tile, and Nova's tiny, shuddering cries. Rain hammered the windows, each drop streaking down the glass like tears. Outside, the street lamps cast long, distorted shadows across the pavement, shadows that could be anyone, anything. Zarya's chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths. Her wet hoodie clung to her ribs, and her hands shook as she knelt beside Cashin again. He lay half-conscious on the diner floor, one cheek pressed to the cool tile, leaving a trail of smeared crimson everywhere he touched. Come on, stay with me, Zarya whispered. Her voice cracked. She wasn't used to her voice failing her. It scared her. Nova wailed, voice raw and exhausted. Zarya shifted the baby closer, pressing Nova's trembling body against her chest. The infant's breath was frantic, fast little bursts against Zarya's throat. Her fingers curled into Zarya's shirt, tiny fists clinging with desperate instinct. I've got you, Zarya murmured, rocking her slightly. I've got you, baby girl. Her own heart was sprinting, thudding so loudly she wondered if Cashin could hear it. She dragged a stack of napkins from the counter with one shaky hand and pressed them to Cashin's side, replacing the blood-soaked towel. The new napkins darkened instantly. Damn it, she whispered. He was bleeding too fast. She wasn't a doctor. She wasn't a nurse. She'd taken CPR once in high school. None of it prepared her for blood like this. Cashin, she said, trying to jolt him awake. Hey, can you hear me? You need to stay with me. His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. He inhaled a ragged breath, slow, shallow, like it hurt just to be alive. Zarya, he rasped. The sound of her name leaving his lips startled her so hard she almost dropped the baby. He didn't ask her name earlier. He was nearly unconscious when she found him. How the hell did he? Why, how do you, she began. But Cashin's gaze wasn't fully seeing her. It drifted in and out of focus. You shouldn't, he struggled, help me. Zarya clenched her jaw. Too late. You don't know what I am. A chill rippled down her spine. But she didn't let it stop her hands from applying pressure to his wound. I know you're bleeding out on my floor, she shot back softly, and I know this baby needs someone. Cashin's body shook with a cough, blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. Nova, he said hoarsely. Her name is Nova. Zarya swallowed. The name made the baby feel more real, more fragile, more hers. A shadow passed across the diner windows. Zarya's breath caught mid-inhale. She froze. Completely. Listening. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Rain muffled but unmistakable. They weren't running. They weren't panicked. They were hunting. Zarya's hands tightened around Nova, pulling the baby into the protective hollow of her body. Cashin's voice became almost a growl, soft, terrified, dangerous. They found me. Zarya's pulse skittered into panic. No, she whispered. No, not yet. A dark figure moved past the frosted glass of the door, just a silhouette, blurred by rain, distorted by the glow of neon. But Zarya saw the broad shoulders, the squared jawline, the way the head tilted, slow, evaluating, scanning the diner interior through the glass. Her throat tightened. Don't make a sound, she whispered to Nova, even though the baby couldn't understand. Even though Nova's cries were soft now, more scared whimpers than screams. She backed away from the windows, inching herself behind the counter, using the narrow space between booths as cover. Cashin tried to sit up. Zarya grabbed his shoulder hard. Stay down, she hissed. You'll bleed out. Zarya, he started. Don't talk. But he ignored her. His hand curled into her sleeve, grip weak but desperate. They won't stop, he whispered. You don't know what they do to. A loud rattle at the door cut him off. Zarya's heart lurched upward in her chest, nearly suffocating her. One shadow. Then another. Two men now. Standing just outside the glass. Rain dripping off their coats in steady rivulets. A hand tried the door handle again. It didn't budge. One of the men stepped closer, so close Zarya could see the outline of his face through the neon glow. Sharp cheekbones. Wet hair slicked back. Mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. He pressed his palm to the glass. Zarya's stomach twisted. Nova whimpered softly, burying her face against Zarya's chest. Zarya closed her eyes tightly, holding her breath, praying Nova would stay quiet. Cashin watched Zarya with something like guilt. Something like grief. Something like admiration. He whispered, I didn't want this for you. Zarya whispered back, voice breaking, it doesn't matter what you wanted. It's what happened. Outside, the men stepped back slightly. Studied the diner. Studied the door. Studied the lock. One tapped the glass twice. A signal. The other nodded. Zarya felt ice flood her veins. They weren't leaving. They were deciding how to get in. She pressed Nova tighter to her chest as Cashin's breaths grew weaker, blood pooling wider beneath him. There were no good choices. But there was one truth. Zarya Holt wasn't going to let killers walk into her diner and take a baby, not while she was still standing. If danger was outside your door and a wounded man begged you not to call for help. If you're still watching this, don't scroll past. A man is bleeding out, a baby is crying in the rain, and someone like Zarya is out here trying to save them with nothing but her courage. The least you can do is stay. Don't leave them alone. Would you risk everything to protect a baby you just met? The men outside didn't knock. They didn't speak. They didn't rush. That was somehow worse. Predators didn't rush. Zarya crouched behind the counter with Nova tucked under her chin, the baby's terrified breaths puffing warm against her collarbone. The diner suddenly felt too small, too exposed. The walls seemed to pulse with the weight of danger pressing against the glass. Cashin lay sprawled behind her, half-conscious, his blood forming a dark, glistening pool that spread in slow, haunting lines across the tile. His breaths came shallow, uneven, each one sounding like it cost him something he didn't have left to give. Outside, the taller man lifted a hand and wiped rain from the glass with deliberate slowness, revealing a pale, angular face under the neon glow. His eyes swept the diner interior, calculating, measuring, hunting. Zarya's pulse stabbed at her ribs. She tightened her hold on Nova. The baby whimpered softly, exhausted and overwhelmed, face pressed into the crook of Zarya's neck. Cashin, Zarya whispered urgently, keeping her voice low. Stay awake. I need you to talk to me. His eyelids fluttered, barely opening. He looked at her like he was fighting his way up through thick water. Zarya, he coughed, the sound wet. You should have run. And left you bleeding on the ground with your baby? Zarya snapped quietly. Not happening. You don't know what I've done. Zarya leaned closer, her expression hardening with a strange mix of fear and defiance. Then tell me. His jaw clenched. A muscle in his cheek twitched. I can't, he rasped. Try. I said you don't. His body tensed as another cough tore through him. Outside, one of the men bent down, examining something near the door, the trail of blood leading inside. Zarya's lungs froze mid-breath. Her thoughts spun like broken glass. Cassian saw her panic. He forced his voice into something sharper. Listen to me, he said. They won't stop. Not until Nova is dead. You weren't supposed to be here. Sorry, Zarya whispered bitterly. I didn't get the memo. His eyes softened. Somehow, even through pain, even with death crawling up his spine, he found a way to look at her like she was a miracle he didn't deserve. That's why this is wrong, he whispered. You're innocent. Zarya almost laughed, a harsh, shaking breath. Innocent? Cassian, my life hasn't been innocent a day in it. A rattle at the front door cut through the moment. Zarya's stomach twisted. The shorter man was testing the lock, jiggling it gently, methodically, like someone trying to decide whether to break a door or pick it. Zarya peeked over the counter just enough to see the men exchange a look. It was a decision-making look. A we're-going-in look. Cassian saw the fear flash across Zarya's face and tried to push himself up. His arms buckled instantly, sending him crashing back to the tile. Zarya pressed a hand to his shoulder. Stop. You're making it worse. He shook his head weakly. His breaths grew faster. He looked like a man drowning on dry land. Zarya, listen, his voice broke. If they get in, they won't hesitate. Not with you. Not with her. Zarya swallowed hard. Her mouth tasted like metal. Her entire life, she'd learned that when danger came, no one protected you. No one swooped in. You survived by instinct and grit. But now she wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting a baby. An innocent, helpless baby whose tiny hand had just curled into the fabric of her hoodie like she trusted her. Zarya wiped a shaking thumb over Nova's damp curls. I'm not letting anyone touch her, she whispered fiercely. Cassian closed his eyes in relief, but then his face twisted with guilt. You shouldn't be here, he whispered again. I didn't want this for you. Zarya leaned in close, her voice ablade. What are you, Cassian? He hesitated. His lips parted. A truth trembled at the edge of his breath. His voice cracked. He squeezed his eyes shut. I'm the reason they're coming. Zarya stared at him, heartbeat stuttering. Before she could push him again, a sudden bang rattled the glass door. Nova jolted in her arms and began crying again, sharp, terrified sobs. Zarya's pulse shot upward. The men outside flinched, looking at the door, then at each other. The taller one nodded. The shorter one reached into his coat. Cassian's body tensed. His voice dropped to a broken whisper. They found us. Zarya's stomach dropped violently. Her instincts screamed. Move. Hide. Protect. Run. Fight. Choose something. But the diner was small. The exits were limited. The storm was closing them in. Cassian was dying. Nova needed her. Noise hummed in Zarya's ears, not from outside, but inside her head, like adrenaline boiling her blood. She lifted Nova higher against her chest and leaned into Cassian so he could hear her over the pounding rain. I'm not running, she whispered. I'm not leaving you. Cassian's eyes opened slowly. A single tear, whether from pain, grief, or acceptance, slid down his temple. You're going to die for a man you don't know, he breathed. Zarya shook her head. No, she whispered. I'm going to survive for a baby who needs me. Another bang slammed against the door. The lock groaned. The men murmured something to each other, low, dark voices muffled by the glass. Zarya's hands trembled violently. Her throat tightened. Her breath shook. But she stood anyway, slowly, carefully, cradling Nova in one arm while reaching behind the counter with her free hand. Her fingers wrapped around something metal. Not a weapon. Just a cast-iron skillet. But it was heavy. Solid. Real. Cassian stared up at her with something like awe. Something like disbelief. You're not afraid, he whispered. Zarya swallowed. I'm terrified, she admitted. But fears never stopped me before. Then the front door shuttered again, this time harder. The men were done waiting. They were coming in. And Zaria Holt, waitress, survivor, nobody special, stood alone between them and a mafia boss's baby. If your heart's pounding right now, imagine Zaria's. She's hiding a stranger's child while death stands outside her door. Don't just watch her struggle, stand with her. Hit subscribe so she doesn't fight this alone. The front door shuttered again, harder this time. The metal frame groaned, vibrating under the men's weight as they tested it, pressed on it, studied its weaknesses. Zaria flinched with each impact, her pulse hammering against her ribs. Nova let out a choking cry, burying her tiny face deeper into the crook of Zaria's neck. Zaria rubbed the baby's back with trembling fingers, whispering nonsense to soothe her even though the fear made her voice shake. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you, shuh. Cashin tried to move again. He failed again. His elbows buckled. His breath hitched. Blood smeared across the tile in wide, sickening strokes. Zaria, he gasped, voice shredded raw. You have to hide. Take Nova. Go through the kitchen, there's a service door. Zaria spun on him, her eyes dark, fierce, blazing with something that startled even Cashin. You are not telling me to leave you, she said sharply. I'm telling you to survive, he whispered, collapsing back onto the floor. Zaria swallowed, her throat thick. Her fear was real, shaking her bones, but her anger was too. Don't pretend you know me, she said. Don't pretend you know what I'm willing to do. Another violent bang hammered against the door. The men were no longer testing it, they were trying to break in. Cashin's eyes widened. His voice collapsed into a growl of pain. They can see your footprints in the rain, he breathed. They know we came inside. They know there's only one way out. Zaria clenched her jaw as she crouched lower behind the counter. Rainwater dripped from her hairline, streaking down her cheeks. The diner lights hummed overhead, pale, unstable, flickering in uneven intervals. The storm outside pressed against the windows, the wind howling like it wanted in. Forced proximity. No exits. No backup. No time. Zaria swallowed hard and looked around, scanning the dim interior. The diner felt claustrophobic, a small world of cracked red vinyl booths, sticky tables, and scratched linoleum floors. The coffee machine hissed intermittently, as if mocking the tension. Cashin tried to push himself upright again, face contorted in agony. Zaria put a hand on his chest. Stop, she whispered. You're tearing something inside. Stay still. He laughed breathlessly, a sound too broken to truly be a laugh. You're ordering me around like I'm not dying. You're not dying today, she snapped back. I'm not letting you. You can't stop it. Watch me. Their eyes locked, a strange, intense, electric moment that neither of them understood, trapped between fear and adrenaline and something darker that neither of them had time to name. Then, scrape. A metal sound dragged across the outside of the diner door. Zaria's blood went cold. The taller man was sliding something along the frame. Testing. Prizing. Searching for a weakness. Cashin's breathing grew ragged. Zaria, you need to listen now. They won't leave until I'm dead. Zaria hugged Nova tighter, her heart fracturing at the edges. The baby's soft cries shook against her chest, tiny sobs that made her throat ache. Why? She whispered. Why are they doing this? What did you do to them? Cashin swallowed, or tried to. His throat bobbed painfully. It's not what I did to them, he said. It's what I refused to do. Zaria frowned. What does that mean? Cashin's gaze flicked to Nova, softening instantly. I wouldn't hand over something they wanted, he whispered. What? Money. Cashin shook his head weakly. Blood. Zaria felt every hair on her body stand straight. Before she could ask more, Cashin winced sharply and his hand flew to his side as pain ripped through him. Zaria immediately pressed down with a clean towel from behind the counter, trying to stop the new bleeding. His fingers brushed hers, cold, trembling, searching for something solid in a world coming apart. Zaria, he whispered hoarsely. I need you to know something. She looked up at him, breath shallow. What? His voice dropped into something vulnerable. Something she had not expected from a man drenched in danger. You saved her, he breathed. You saved Nova. Not me. I just brought her here. You protected her. Zarya stared at him, her throat tightening. I didn't have a choice. Yes, Cashin rasped. You did. And that truth landed heavy. Too heavy. Because he was right. She did have a choice. And she chose them. Even before she knew who Cashin really was. Even before she knew exactly how deep this danger went. Zarya looked away, blinking hard as tears threatened. I'm not letting you die, she said quietly. Not while I can still fight. Cashin's eyes softened, with gratitude, with pain, with something unnameable. He whispered, then you're braver than anyone I've ever met. A soft thud hit the glass door again. Zarya jerked her head up. The taller man leaned forward, examining the doorframe. His hand tightened around something hidden inside his coat. Zarya's stomach flipped. They weren't breaking the door yet. They were preparing. Choosing the perfect moment. Cashin's fingers curled weakly around the hem of her sleeve. Zarya. But before he could say more, Nova began crying again, loud and frightened, her body trembling. The sound echoed in the diner, too loud, too revealing. The men outside turned their heads sharply toward the noise. Zarya's heart seized. Her breath caught. No, she whispered. No, 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 please don't cry now, baby. But it was too late. The shorter man stepped back from the door. The taller one nodded. A silent understanding passed between them. They had heard the baby. They had found their leverage. They stepped closer to the entrance. And the taller man reached into his coat. Zarya gripped the skillet tighter in her shaking hand. Cashin forced his eyes open. And the storm outside roared louder, drowning out the sound of Zarya's fractured whisper. They're coming. If you were trapped in a small space with someone dangerous hunting you, would you reveal your fear, or hide it to protect the people depending on you? The diner door shuddered so violently that Zarya felt the vibration travel through the floor and into her bones. The men weren't testing anymore. They were preparing to break in. Zarya tightened her grip on Nova and turned to Cashin, who looked like he was fading in and out of consciousness, his skin turning a frightening shade of gray. We can't stay here, she whispered fiercely. They'll get inside any second. Cashin tried to respond, but his breath came in ragged, uneven pulls. He didn't need to speak, the terror in his eyes said enough. Zarya's decision snapped into place like a lock engaging. We're moving, she breathed. Now. She slid her arms under Cashin's shoulders. The moment she lifted, a guttural groan ripped out of him, low, sharp, strangled, but he forced himself upright, leaning heavily against her. The weight nearly crushed her. Cashin wasn't just tall, he was solid, built like a man who'd fought for his life more times than he could count. But Zarya gritted her teeth and pulled. Her muscles screamed. Her back strained. Her knees buckled. But she didn't stop. No one touches this baby, she whispered. Not tonight. Nova whimpered, tiny breaths hiccuping against Zarya's collar. Zarya tucked the blanket around her tighter before backing toward the kitchen. Behind them, the front door rattled again, this time with the sound of metal scraping metal. Zarya flung open the swinging kitchen door and dragged Cashin behind the counter, weaving between stainless steel prep tables and bins of produce. The diner smelled of onions, grease, and disinfectant, scents that usually comforted her after long shifts. Tonight, the air felt suffocating. The storm intensified outside. Rain slammed the roof. The lights flickered. Cashin's legs buckled mid-step. His head dropped forward. Cashin. Zarya hissed. Don't you pass out on me. He groaned, eyes rolling, but he clung to her shoulder. Where? He rasped. Where are we going? Zarya shoved open the back door, the metal icy against her palm, and the night air exploded around them, cold and sharp. My apartment, she said. It's close. 2 blocks. He tried to laugh, but pain stole the sound halfway. You're insane. No, Zarya whispered. I'm desperate. The alley behind the diner was pitch black except for a single flickering bulb mounted above the back door. Water cascaded off the awning, spraying them with icy droplets. Trash cans clattered softly in the wind. Far above them, the train tracks hummed with distant movement. Zarya hoisted Cashin's arm around her shoulder again. He sagged heavily, nearly taking her down with him. Nova whimpered, sensing the shift in atmosphere, the danger, the cold, her father's fading warmth. "It's okay," Zarya murmured breathlessly. "I've got you. Both of you." Every step felt like dragging the weight of a dying world. Her sneakers splashed through puddles. Rain soaked her hair, her jeans, her sleeves. Her breath fogged the air in harsh bursts. Cashin stumbled. Zarya grunted, catching him before he hit the ground. "Stay awake," she panted. "Don't you dare close your eyes." Cashin's head rested briefly against her shoulder. The intimacy of it startled her, the heat of his breath against her neck, the tremor in his muscles. "You're strong," he whispered weakly. "No," Zarya said. "I'm furious." A car engine revved in the distance. Zarya's heart leapt into her throat. She looked back. No headlights yet. But she knew the Sorellis weren't far behind. She half-dragged, half-carried Cashin across the alley, weaving around dumpsters, running when she had to, steadying him when he lurched. Nova's cries weakened into soft whimpers, exhausted, scared, cold. Zarya held the baby close, keeping her warm with body heat. Wind clawed at her hood. Her legs felt like burning lead. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her building was old, brick-worn by decades of storms, windows fogged, the front light dead since winter. The entryway smelled faintly of wet carpet and cheap laundry detergent. She fumbled with her keys, breath shaking. "Hurry," Cashin murmured, barely conscious. "I'm trying," she whispered. The lock finally turned. She shoved the door open and dragged Cashin inside. Her apartment was small, warm yellow lamps, a thrift store couch with a fraying corner, a kitchen barely the size of a closet, a hallway with peeling wallpaper, a small bedroom with a crib she kept as a reminder of her past, one she never explained to anyone. She kicked the door shut behind them, locked it, slid the chain, and threw the deadbolt. Only then did she let herself gasp for air. Cashin collapsed onto the couch, eyes half closed, blood soaking through the towel she'd pressed against him. His breaths were shallow, too shallow. Zarya placed Nova gently on her bed, surrounded by pillows, and covered her with a warm blanket. The baby's cries softened into tiny sniffles. Her eyelids fluttered, exhausted. Zarya brushed a thumb over the infant's soft cheek. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I promise." Then she turned back to Cashin. He shivered violently, his body going into shock. Zarya grabbed every towel she owned, pressed them against his wound, and knelt beside him, breath trembling. "Cashin," she whispered. "I need you to stay with me. Please." His eyes drifted open. There was pain in them, but also something else. Something he had been trying to hide since the moment she found him. "Zarya," he whispered. "There's something you need to know." Her heart thudded. "What?" He swallowed hard, voice breaking. "Nova, she's not just in danger because of me." His chest rose in a shuddering breath. "She exists because of the worst decision I ever made." Zarya's breath hitched. Cashin shut his eyes, pained. "I used to run things for the Sorellis," he said. "I walked away. They wanted me dead for it, but Nova." His voice cracked. "She was never supposed to survive." Zarya stiffened. Her pulse slammed into her throat. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Cashin opened his eyes, and she saw it. The guilt. The grief. The past he didn't want to face. They wanted her gone before she was even born. Zarya felt her stomach twist. She looked toward the bedroom, where Nova slept, unaware of the blood-soaked truth surrounding her life. Then back at Cashin, broken, bleeding, terrified. For the first time, Zarya saw him not as a threat, but as a man who'd crawled out of hell carrying the only piece of goodness he had left. And he trusted her to keep that goodness alive. Her chest ached. Her throat burned. "Cashin," she whispered. "Why would they want to hurt a baby?" His eyes filled with a pain too deep for words. "She's the heir," he said, "to everything I refuse to give them." Zarya's breath stilled. "Heir to what?" Cashin's jaw clenched. "To the Moretti Empire," he whispered. "The one I burned to the ground." Zarya looked at Nova, a tiny child hunted before she could walk, and whispered, "If you're still watching this, don't leave. Don't turn away. Some stories deserve witnesses, even when they hurt." The storm outside had settled into a steady rhythm, rain ticking softly against the windows like impatient fingers. Inside Zarya's apartment, the quiet was thick and fragile, the kind that comes after chaos but before the next strike. Zarya hovered in the small living room, breath still uneven, clothes soaked, hands stained with Cashin's blood. She turned on only one lamp, a soft amber glow that pushed back the darkness but didn't erase it. Shadows clung stubbornly to the corners of the room. Cashin lay on her couch, his shirt cut open, towels soaked crimson beneath him. His chest rose in shallow, uneven pulls, each breath sounding like he was walking the edge of death. Zarya dropped to her knees beside him again, fingers trembling as she checked the makeshift bandages. "Cashin," she whispered. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. A faint, ghostly nod. "You're still losing blood," she whispered, voice breaking. "I need to do something more." Cashin's hand shot out weakly, catching her wrist with surprising strength, strength born purely from fear. "No hospitals," he gasped. "No cops. No outsiders." Zarya swallowed. "They'll save your life. They'll also expose her location." Zarya felt her chest tighten. She glanced toward the bedroom where Nova slept beneath a soft blanket. The baby's silhouette rose and fell, small, innocent, unaware she'd been born into a war. Cashin followed Zarya's gaze. His voice softened, cracked open. "She's all I have left," he said. "All that's good in me." Zarya's heart squeezed painfully. "You're not all bad," she murmured. Cashin laughed, a hollow broken sound that ended in a wince. "Zarya, you have no idea what I've done." She didn't flinch. She didn't move away. Instead, she pressed a cool cloth to his forehead, brushing damp hair away from his eyes. "Then tell me," she whispered. He stared at her like she was a doorway he never meant to open. Something in his expression shifted, the hardness cracking just enough to let light through. "I was raised in violence," he said quietly. "Born into it. Molded by it. Most kids learn sports. I learned leverage. Influence. Fear." Zarya stayed still, breathing softly. Listening. "I didn't want that life," Cashin continued. "But when my father died, I was next in line. The Sorellis expected me to take my place under them. Control their money. Their streets. Their secrets." He swallowed, jaw tightening. "I refused." Zarya's brows pulled together. "That's why they want you dead?" "That's one reason." His gaze flicked toward the bedroom. "The other reason is her." Zarya whispered, "Nova." Cashin's eyes softened with a pain that felt ancient. "When her mother found out who I really was, she ran. Smart woman. But the Sorellis found out she was pregnant." His voice cracked. "They wanted to erase any future threat. Erase my bloodline." Zarya felt heat rise behind her eyes. "You saved her," she whispered. Cashin nodded weakly. "I stole her from them before they could finish what they started. And from that day, they've been hunting us." Zarya reached out, hesitated, then gently rested her hand on his arm. "That wasn't a crime," she said. "That was a father protecting his child." Cashin's throat worked silently, as if swallowing tears he refused to shed. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I didn't save her because I'm good. I saved her because I couldn't live with another sin on my name." Zarya squeezed his arm gently. "Cashin Moretti," she murmured, "you are bleeding out in a stranger's apartment because you didn't want a baby to die. That tells me everything I need to know." He stared at her like her words hurt and healed him at the same time. Zarya exhaled shakily and reached for her first aid kit, an old box with frayed edges and nearly empty supplies. As she dug through it, Cashin's voice softened more. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. Zarya hesitated. Her fingers froze on a roll of bandages. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "Maybe because I've spent my whole life wishing someone had protected me, the way you're trying to protect her." Cashin blinked. Slowly. "Someone hurt you," he said. It wasn't a question. Zarya's jaw clenched. "A long time ago." Cashin's hand moved, slow shaking, reaching for hers. "Who?" he whispered. Zarya stood abruptly, cutting the intimacy like a blade. "That doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is that you need stitching, and I don't have the supplies. Cashin shut his eyes, breathing hard. You can't leave, he whispered. I know. Zarya ran a hand through her damp hair, pacing the living room in tight circles. Every creak of the floorboards, every rumble of thunder, every passing vehicle outside made her nerves spark. I can't take you to a hospital, she muttered. I can't buy medical supplies at this hour. And I can't risk stepping outside with Nova here. She stopped, facing him again. I'll have to clean the wound myself. Cashin's eyes widened faintly. That will hurt. You'll live, she said. He coughed a weak laugh. You're a very blunt woman. You're a very confusing man, she shot back, pulling a chair closer. Cashin watched her, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with a strange quiet awe. No one's ever talked to me like that, he whispered. Zarya dipped a cloth into warm water and gently pressed it to his wound. His entire body jerked, breath ripping through clenched teeth. Sorry, she whispered. I know. Don't apologize, he rasped. Just keep looking at me. It helps. Their eyes locked. Heat poured through Zarya's chest, unwanted, unexpected, dangerous. Fine, she murmured. Just don't die on me. He smiled, slow, pained but real. You wouldn't let me. She swallowed. Damn right I wouldn't. Cashin's breath became shallow again. His eyelids dropped. Zarya leaned closer, pressing a hand to his cheek. Cashin, she whispered. Stay with me. His voice, barely audible. If I don't make it, promise you'll raise her somewhere safe. Zarya froze. No, she whispered fiercely. Don't do that. Don't give me last wishes. You're not dying tonight. He gazed at her, really gazed, through pain, exhaustion, and something deeper. You're the first person I've trusted in years. Her breath caught. Cashin. Nova whimpered from the bedroom. Zarya turned her head, a protective instinct rising in her like a second heartbeat. She looked back at him. We're not dying, she repeated softly. Any of us. Cashin's eyes closed, not from surrender, but from fragile peace. Okay, he breathed. I believe you. If a broken stranger trusted you more than anyone else in the world, would you let them? The storm outside hadn't let up. Rain hammered Zarya's apartment windows like impatient fists, the wind howling down the alleyways. But inside, for one fragile moment, the world felt still. Cashin lay on her couch, half-conscious, bandaged with trembling care. Zarya sat close enough to feel the heat coming off his feverish skin. Nova slept in the bedroom, a soft, rhythmic rise and fall of a tiny chest under a floral blanket. It was the calmest moment they'd had all night. Which meant it wouldn't last. Cashin stirred, breath hitching. Zarya, he murmured, forcing his eyes open. Confusion flickered in them, then fear. His gaze drifted toward the apartment door. Zarya frowned. What is it? His voice was hoarse. They'll come. They'll follow the blood trail. Zarya's stomach tightened, but she forced herself to breathe slow. I cleaned the hallway, she whispered. There's no trail to follow. Cashin's jaw clenched. You don't understand. These men don't need clues. They need motive. And I gave them plenty. Before Zarya could respond, a soft thump echoed from somewhere outside the apartment. Zarya froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Another thump. Heavier. Closer. Rain alone couldn't make that sound. Cashin's eyes widened, slow but unmistakable horror. Zarya, he whispered. Listen to me. Take Nova and go. No, her voice was sharp, fierce. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I won't. Cashin tried to sit up but winced violently, collapsing back onto the couch. His fingers curled weakly into the fabric, knuckles white. Zarya, he rasped, they won't spare you. Or her. They'll burn this place to the ground. Zarya swallowed, throat trembling. You're not dying here, she whispered. And neither is she. Another sound interrupted her, a scrape along the hallway floor. Zarya's blood ran cold. Someone was dragging their feet. Slow. Steady. Deliberate. The hallway light flickered under the doorframe. A shadow passed. Cashin grabbed Zarya's wrist. Hide her. Zarya moved instantly. She ran to the bedroom, her footsteps silent on the worn carpet. Nova lay curled in the blankets, tiny fingers curled into fists. Zarya scooped her up gently, pressing the baby against her chest. Nova stirred, whimpered, then clung to Zarya's shirt instinctively. "It's okay, sweetheart," Zarya whispered, her voice shaking. "Mama's got you." The word mama slipped out before she realized it. Her breath hitched. Cashin's voice called weakly from the living room. "Zarya, hurry." She tucked Nova into the deep laundry basket beneath her dresser, layering soft blankets around her to muffle the sound. Nova's wide eyes stared up, glossy with fear, but she didn't cry. Zarya stroked the infant's cheek. "I'll be right back," she whispered. "I promise." Then she stood, slowly, silently, and stepped back into the living room. Cashin was watching her, chest rising unevenly. "You shouldn't have come back," he said softly. "I told you, I'm not leaving you." Cashin's breath trembled. He looked at her like that choice meant more to him than she would ever understand. A violent bang slammed against the apartment door. Zarya jumped. The wood splintered slightly. Cashin reached instinctively for a weapon he didn't have. "They found us," he breathed. Zarya stepped closer to him, skillet still in her shaking hand. "Can you stand?" she whispered. "No," he murmured, shame heavy in his voice. Zarya swallowed hard. Thunder cracked outside. The lights flickered. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The door rattled again, harder. A muffled voice on the other side. "Open it, girl." Zarya's throat tightened. She recognized the tone. Cold. Smooth. Commanding. These weren't thugs. These were men accustomed to blood. Cashin closed his eyes. "Zarya, you need to hide." "I'm not hiding," she whispered. "You can't fight them. Watch me." Another hit, this time the hinges groaned. "Zarya." "No," she snapped. "Stop telling me to run. I ran my whole life. Not anymore." Cashin stared at her, stunned. His breathing hitched. Something in his expression cracked wide open. Admiration, fear, desperation. "You're going to die because of me," he whispered. Zarya stepped closer, kneeling beside him again. She pressed her forehead briefly against his, a single moment of pure human connection in the middle of terror. "You're not the only one worth saving," she whispered. A gunshot exploded through the doorframe. Wood splintered inward. Zarya gasped and ducked. Cashin shielded his face weakly. The men outside spoke again. "Open it. Last warning." Zarya rose to her feet slowly, breath shaking, skillet still in her hand, heart beating like a frantic drum. Cashin looked up at her. "Zarya," his voice was hoarse. Breaking. Full of something she wasn't ready to name. "Don't do it," he whispered. Zarya's jaw clenched. "I'm not letting them take what you bled to protect." Another gunshot ripped through the hinge. Smoke curled into the apartment. The door sagged. One more hit would knock it open. Zarya stepped between the door and Cashin, shielding him with her own body. She didn't breathe. She didn't move. She didn't flinch. Cashin's eyes widened, tears forming despite himself. "Why?" he whispered, voice collapsing. "Why would you die for me?" Zarya tightened her grip on the skillet. "I'm not here for you," she whispered. "I'm here for her." The final blow slammed into the door. The frame cracked. And the Sorelli men began to break through. If danger came to your door and someone begged you to hide, would you stand your ground, or run? The apartment door finally gave way. Crack, boom. It slammed inward, wood splintering, the metal latch snapping clean off. The door bounced against the wall and hung crooked on one hinge, swinging slightly with each gust of wind that roared down the hallway. Two men stepped inside. Not rushed. Not sloppy. Controlled. Professional. Their boots were soaked with rain, leaving dark prints on the carpet. One held a gun fitted with a suppressor. The other scanned the room with cold precision. Zarya felt her throat close. Her skin prickled with terror. But she didn't move from in front of Cashin. The taller man's gaze landed on her, then on the blood-soaked couch behind her, then on the tiny flecks of baby blanket sticking to her hoodie. His voice was low, smooth, chilling. "Where is the child?" Zarya's breath faltered. Her fingers tightened around the skillet. Her knuckles turned white. Gone, she lied, forcing the word out. She's not here. The man smiled, a slow, knowing, terrifying smile. You expect us to believe you ran with a baby into a storm? His head tilted. Try again. Cashin struggled to sit up behind her. Leave her out of this, he rasped. It's me you want. Both men turned to him. The closer one shook his head. Oh, Cashin. You should have stayed loyal. We gave you everything, and you spit on it. Cashin's jaw tightened. I gave you years of my life. You asked for my soul. The gunman raised his weapon, pointing it at Cashin's chest. Zarya stepped in front of him instantly, arms wide, blocking the shot with her own body. Zarya, no. Cashin hissed through clenched teeth. But she didn't move. Her heartbeat thundered so loudly she could barely hear the storm anymore. The gunman lifted an eyebrow. You're braver than I expected. I'm not brave, Zarya said, voice shaking. I'm furious. The shorter man took a step toward the hallway where Nova slept. Zarya moved instantly, positioning herself directly between him and the door. He paused. Annoyed. Cashin's eyes widened in panic. Don't touch her, Zarya said, her voice suddenly low, steady, lethal. Not one step. The man smirked. And who are you supposed to be? Zarya swallowed. Then answered truthfully. The only person in this room who doesn't want a child dead. The taller man laughed softly, a sound that had no humor in it. You have no idea who you're protecting. I don't care who he is, Zarya shot back. I care about her. Cashin closed his eyes briefly, jaw tightening. Something broke in his expression. Awe, guilt, pain, devotion, all tangled into one impossible emotion. The gunman shifted his aim. Not at Cashin. At Zarya. Cashin lurched forward. No. Zarya didn't flinch. She stared straight into the barrel, breath shallow but shoulders squared. The man's finger tightened slightly on the trigger. Then, Nova cried from the bedroom. A soft, frightened, unmistakable sound. The apartment froze. Zarya's heart dropped into her stomach. Her blood turned to ice. The gunman's smile widened. There she is. Zarya's voice cracked. Please, she's a baby. The shorter man pivoted toward the bedroom. Cashin pushed himself off the couch, collapsing halfway up but dragging his body forward anyway. Don't, he gasped, voice breaking. Don't touch her. The taller man raised his gun toward Cashin again. That was the moment Zarya understood. Someone was about to die. And she had 1 second to choose who it would be. Her fear evaporated. Her instincts roared to life. She grabbed the nearest thing with weight, a broken table leg she'd hidden behind the couch earlier, and surged forward with everything she had. She swung. The wood cracked against the shorter man's forearm, knocking his gun loose. It clattered across the tile and slid under the kitchen table. What? He shouted, shaking his arm in pain. The taller man spun toward her. Cashin, summoning strength from a place near death, lunged from the couch and tackled the man's legs. They crashed into the coffee table, glass shattering everywhere. Zarya grabbed the crying baby from the bedroom and clutched her tight, shielding her head from debris. Cashin struggled beneath the attacker, fighting for his life with half a lung of air and a body ready to collapse. The man punched him across the face, once, twice, the blows echoing through the apartment like gunshots. Zarya screamed, Cashin. Blood dripped from his mouth. He whispered hoarsely, Zarya, run. But she didn't move. She couldn't move. She was rooted to the floor by terror and instinct and raw, burning protectiveness. The shorter man lunged toward her again. And Zarya did the only thing her body knew. She swung the skillet. Bam. The sound echoed like a thunderclap. The man reeled, clutching his jaw. Blood sprayed from his lip. He stumbled back, stunned. Cashin, seizing the moment, reached for the dropped gun. His hand closed around the grip. He pointed it upward at the taller man pinning him. Get off her, he roared. The gunman froze, shocked by the sudden fury in Cashin's voice. Cashin fired. Thud. The man collapsed backward. Silence. Then heavy breathing. Zarya pressed Nova against her chest, tears streaking her cheeks, hands trembling violently. Cashin dragged himself across the floor toward her, leaving a streak of blood behind him. "Zarya," he whispered. "Give her to me." Zarya looked at him, really looked at him, at the man she had been terrified of hours ago, now crawling across the floor to make sure his baby was still alive. She placed Nova gently into his arms. He held the infant to his chest and sobbed once, a raw broken sound that shattered every wall Zarya had ever built. Then he looked up at her, eyes red wet, full of agony and gratitude. "You saved her," he breathed. "And you saved me." Zarya knelt in front of him and whispered, "I didn't choose this life, Cashin. But I'm choosing you right now." Cashin's breath caught. His voice cracked with emotion. "Then I'll choose you back," he whispered. "If I live long enough." If you had to choose between saving yourself or saving someone you barely knew, which choice would you make in the moment that defines you? Silence settled over the apartment, a heavy, ringing silence broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the thunder still rolling distant across the Chicago sky. The two men lay unconscious on the floor. One groaning. One unmoving. Zarya stood perfectly still, chest heaving, hair stuck to her forehead with sweat and rain. The skillet trembled in her grip before she finally set it down with a shaky clatter. Cashin sat on the floor, back against the couch, Nova curled protectively in his arms. He looked half dead, bloody, bruised, breath ragged, but alive. Alive because of her. Zarya knelt in front of him slowly, her breath catching when she saw the way he was holding his daughter, palms cupped around her head, body curved protectively, forehead touching hers as if to reassure himself she was real. Nova let out a soft, sleepy whimper. Cashin broke. A single tear slipped down his cheek, not from pain, but from relief so deep it shook him. He looked up at Zarya, voice raw. "You saved my daughter." Zarya swallowed hard. "I wasn't going to let them take her." "You saved me too." Zarya shook her head. "No, Cashin. You saved yourself. I just refused to let you die on my floor." He managed a faint, pained smile. "You refuse a lot of things." She laughed quietly, a shaky, emotional sound. "Yeah, it's a problem." They sat in silence for a moment. The storm eased outside, rain softening into a gentle patter. The apartment felt small, intimate, thick with adrenaline and something warmer, something tender and frightening. Cashin's breathing grew shallow again, and Zarya's instinct snapped back to urgency. "You're losing blood," she whispered. "We need help. Real help." "No hospitals," Cashin repeated weakly. Zarya's eyes softened. "Cashin, they already found us. The danger is here. Right here. There's no point hiding now." He looked at her, fear flickering in his eyes. "They'll arrest me." "They'll protect her," Zarya countered. "They'll protect us." Cashin's eyes widened. "Us?" Zarya froze, realizing what she'd said. Her voice softened. "Yeah, us." Cashin swallowed hard, gaze locked on hers. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I know," Zarya whispered, "but I care anyway." It was the closest she could get to saying don't leave me or I want you here or you're not alone anymore. He closed his eyes, emotion tightening his jaw. Nova shifted in his arms, whimpering again. Zarya reached out and touched her tiny hand. Nova curled her fingers around Zarya's thumb. Something warm flooded Zarya's chest. Something irreversible. Cashin watched the moment, watched Zarya soothe his daughter with a gentleness he'd never been allowed to receive. His voice broke. "She trusts you," he whispered. "More than anyone." Zarya's throat tightened. "I trust her too," she whispered. "And I want her safe. And alive. And loved." Cashin exhaled shakily, a sound of defeat and surrender and hope all tangled together. "Then call," he said quietly. "Call for help." Zarya pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She dialed 911. Her voice cracked as she said, "There's been a break-in, and someone's been shot. Please hurry." She ended the call and placed a pillow behind Cashin's head, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "You think so?" he murmured. "I know so." She leaned in closer, close enough to see every detail of his bruised features, every tremble of his breath, every spark of humanity he'd buried under years of violence. You survived tonight, she whispered. That means something. Cashin's voice was barely audible. What does it mean? Zarya smiled softly. It means you get another chance. His breath caught. He stared at her, not like a savior, not like a stranger, but like someone who had become the anchor holding him to life. Zarya, he whispered, if I make it out of this, if I live through whatever comes next. He swallowed hard. I want a life that doesn't hurt. I want a life where I can hold my daughter without fear. Zarya's smile trembled. You can have that. How? He asked, voice breaking. Because you're not doing it alone anymore. Cashin closed his eyes. A tear slid down his cheek. He squeezed Zarya's hand. Outside, sirens echoed distantly, coming closer. Zarya exhaled shakily. Cashin looked toward the bedroom. Will they take her away? He whispered, fear twisting his voice. Zarya touched his face gently. No, she whispered. They won't take her. I won't let them. Cashin's eyes glistened. You'd fight for her? Zarya nodded. I already did. The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights flashed through the rain-soaked windows. Cashin reached for Zarya again, weak, trembling, and she didn't hesitate. She held his hand gently, firmly, like she was anchoring him to the world. His voice was barely a breath. Zarya, if I don't wake up, tell her I tried. Her eyes filled with tears. No, she whispered fiercely. You tell her yourself. The sirens stopped outside. Doors slammed. Boots splashed through puddles. Zarya leaned in close and whispered. You're not dying tonight, Cashin Moretti. Not after everything we fought through. Not after everything you survived. You owe her a life. You owe yourself a life. We're going to build that. Together. Cashin exhaled, not in pain, but in relief. A soft smile ghosted across his lips. Together, he whispered. Zarya kissed Nova's forehead, then cupped Cashin's cheek. And as the paramedics burst through the door, Zarya whispered one last promise. You're safe now. Both of you. Cashin's eyes fluttered closed, but not from death. From trust. From exhaustion. From the first moment of peace he'd felt in years. Zarya held Nova tight as the paramedics lifted Cashin onto a stretcher. She walked beside him, refusing to let go of his hand until they gently guided her back. Cashin's final whisper before the ambulance doors closed. Don't leave me. Zarya placed her palm against the glass and whispered. I won't. The ambulance pulled away into the rainy Chicago morning. Zarya stood in the street, Nova in her arms, her heart pounding with fear, and something new. Hope. A life she never expected. A love she never saw coming. A future that was finally hers to choose. If you stayed with us this long, don't disappear now. Stories like this deserve people who care enough to hear the ending.
Thank you for staying with this story to the very end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you'll not miss out on the next video.